Our next speaker is California State Registration expert Bob Ean. Bob is with R3 Ag Consulting, and he is based in the U.S. He will discuss today changes in California regulations. What are the costs? What about those claims that you put on your label, especially around sustainability? He's thinking about classifications as well as toxicity levels. Bob is an experienced regulatory consultant with a demonstrated history of working in the research industry. He has a strong legal professional, skilled at agrochemicals, business planning, good laboratory practice, protein chemistry, and sales. As CEO and technical manager of the California Garlic and Onion Research Advisory Board for the past 20 years, Bob is actively engaged with the California regulatory agencies and their processes. His knowledge has been honed over the past 20 years, and he will share that today. Bob graduated from Colorado State University with a BS in agronomy and a master's in crop science. Please help me welcome Bob Ean.
Greetings. This is Bob Ean, EHN. I am the regulatory manager for the California Garlic and Onion Research Advisory Board. I am also active in registration, research, and regulatory issues affecting pesticides in California. What I'd like to do today is to talk to you about some key elements that are affecting our growers in California that have an impact upon production, have an impact on their livelihood. One of the major issues we're looking at is concern for bee kills and bee toxicities, and as a result, the neonicotinoids. The second thing I want to really talk about is the effect of regulations on production. Part of the regulations proposed by the Department of Pesticide Regulation and by the water boards are more scrutiny of what growers are doing, how much water they're pumping, how much pesticide they're applying, and what pesticides they're applying. I also want to talk to you about that without all of this, water is a key element. And we are in a situation of a severe drought now. Our allocation from one of our large reservoirs is 5%. We may idle as much as 100,000 acres of cropland. And the first half, as you probably are aware, the chlorpyrifos was taken off. It was brick by brick, the ability to use chlorpyrifos was removed. The next product that are a group of compounds that are in light of being under review are the neonicotinoids. And that's driven by potential for bee toxicity. And I'm going to share with you how California is handling the California reevaluation on neonicotinoids. The first evaluation of this took place back in 2008, taking a look at bee issues, and a risk assessment was established. In January, there was an addendum published to that, and then in August, they shared proposed regulations for the neonicotinoids that they would be handled. And as you probably know, in February and March, we probably have 80% of the bees in the United States that are used for pollination working on 1.1 million acres of almonds. So bees are a critical piece of management for our California crops. The steps that they've taken, I'll give you an example of fruiting vegetables. This is where some of it becomes very difficult. And I just use tomatoes as an example. Same seed growing season is prohibited, except if it's pome fruits and stone fruits, and there are specific recommendations there. The section that my onion and garlic fall in are the crops that are not attractive to bees. So, in fact, bees are really not terribly averse. They're very averse to going into our seed onions and trying to gather pollen. So we're not covered by that. The next steps in the regulation process, the comments were accepted through September 11, 2020. DPR was to partner with California Department of Food and Ag to get an economic analysis of what it would cost growers, continuation with stakeholders, and the draft regulations were to be posted by the end of 2020. I just received copies of them, and they just released in May of 2021. And now the final comment period is open for our growers and our stakeholders to look at, and we'll go from there. How DPR is handling this, and in addition to the neonics, it is how shall I say this? We have a county ag commissioner's not a situation. We have a county ag commissioner group that in each county, they are the enforcement arm of California DPR. One of the problems we've had, we've lost 50% of our agricultural extension specialists tied to land grant colleges over the last 15 years due to funding, general funds, reduction in funds and costs involved in keeping them going. And I agree with this. Our UC extension program used to be the backbone of pest management in California. I wanted to talk to you also about something else that's going on kind of concurrently with the DPR and the general California Water Board intent to reduce stress on our natural resources and to provide what we would call more of a sustainable approach to production agriculture. One of the things that I was surprised about, and I guess I should have seen this, but Walmart has put in place a program that encourages fresh suppliers, our food suppliers, to phase out chlorpyrifos. That's already been done, and the neonicotinoids were applicable, unless you can't avoid replacing them. They want to improve and expand their pollinator habitats, and they'll encourage fresh produce suppliers to protect, restore, or establish pollinator habitats for at least 4% of the land they own, operate, or invest. Now, we're also in the lurch of a terrible water situation. Enough that we have 5% allocation of water in our San Joaquin Valley. Up in the Klamath Basin, they have 0%. And we have had to put programs in place to reduce the amount of water that we take out. We have to put back in the same amount. And these requirements were signed into law in September of 2014, and we have 20 years to get this program in place. I don't have a slide for that, but I wanted to be able to tell you that that program is in place. We'll probably fallow 100,000 acres before this is done because we can't depend on groundwater. As I said, we're in a terrible drought right now. And so crop production will be reduced, and it'll only be those high-value crops. A final note, I was asked to say something on cannabis and biostimulants. California really turns a blind eye toward cannabis. The drug itself is enforced out in the field by enforcement people. You have to register to be able to grow the a non-oil type of cannabis that people use, not hemp. Hemp is approved by USDA as an agricultural crop, and so it is exempt from residue requirements, and it is registered. Some 25B exemptions are broad enough to include cannabis, but for the most part, California turns an eye to that. They depend on enforcement to take care of all of that information. And lastly, biostimulants are really something that's of concern to most states. Is a biostimulant a pesticide, or is a biostimulant a plant growth regulator, or is biostimulant just a product that improves soil biome and improves soil health? And there are a number of products out, from the kelps to the humic acids to a mixture of things that do indeed have auxins and hormones and other products that at a larger amount would be indeed pesticidal, but in the amounts that they are in the products that we have that are being used, I said, there's the kelps, the humic acids, and a number of other things. They're low enough that they're not being considered as pesticides and not insect growth regulators, not plant growth regulators. Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, northwestern states, are not in agreement. They really have had a hard time recognizing any of these kelp products because they do contain what's considered to be plant growth regulators. And so with that is, in a nutshell, what's going on in California and the western states.